Hello and welcome to Getting Your Money's Worth, the show that focuses on value. I'm Judith West, and our guest today is Laurence Shatkin, author of Great Jobs in the President's Stimulus Plan.
That's Laurence Shatkin.
Lawrence, yeah. What did I say?
Said Leonard.
Oh, sorry about that. Well, I got the L right.
Oh, that's
it's
right.
that stimulus plan. Every time I hear about it, it makes me tongue-tied.
No, it's okay.
Right. It's the trillions of dollars.
It's a lot.
Right. Okay. Thanks and welcome to the show. Is it Larry or Lawrence?
I really like Laurence.
You like Lawrence. Okay. Lawrence. You're a career counselor, a career guidance counselor? What are you?
No, I'm not a counselor. I'm an career information expert, author. That's what I do. I write about the information.
In jobs?
Having to do with jobs. But
So
I don't counsel individuals on what their best move is in their career.
So you're like, what are you, like a walking DOT or something?
Well, I do a lot of research in various sources.
DOT being dictionary of titles.
Which has kind of got outmoded now.
Does that still exist anymore?
Not really. You can sort of get it. It's a sort of proprietary database now. The government's replaced that with a somewhat more comprehensive database. In some ways, it's less comprehensive, but it matches the current economy better.
Yeah, years ago, I was a guidance counselor in an adult basic education program.
Oh, yes.
ESL program.
Then I'm sure you use DOT a lot.
It's a carryover from the DOT days.
Nowadays, they use something called the ONET, which is it's a database rather than a book, and it covers a more reasonable set of occupations.
Okay, so you wrote this book in conjunction with the stimulus plan?
Yes. The idea was,
how did you get a heads up on everything?
Well, the stimulus plan was announced by the economists in the transition team in the middle of January. It was laid out where they wanted to put the money and what effect they expected it to have on jobs. And it was laid out in that way. Then, of course, it had to go through Congress. Now, actually, very little got changed. Some people thought that there would be very little carryover somehow, or that Congress would brutally change this. Actually, it's just around the edges that it got changed. So most of what the economists set out there was a valid way of predicting what was going to be in the final bill.
So our president, Obama, promised that the stimulus plan would create something like 3 to 4 million jobs.
Something like that.
How many years?
In the next 2 years.
Next 2 years. There's a lot of skepticism about that number.
Yeah, there
Lawrence.
has to be.
Yeah. What's your point of view?
I think that it sounds fairly realistic to me.
Does it?
I'm not an economist, but I read what the economists are writing, and it seems like the consensus is that it's going to have an impact roughly in that window.
Okay, so in this stimulus plan that's going to create these millions of jobs, and let's hope it does.
Create or preserve.
Create or preserve. Okay, that's a good point. Mm-hmm. Are there new jobs that we don't need existing? What kind of jobs in general are going to come out to be available?
It's quite a mixture. Some of them are, none of them are really jobs that never existed before. Some of them will place the emphasis on parts of the economy that maybe have been neglected until recently, such as green jobs, for example. There's going to be, that's one way the economy.
What are green jobs?
Jobs that have to do with energy conservation. Energy conservation is.
What's an example of a green job?
Insulating a building so that it's more energy efficient.
Winterizing a home.
Exactly. The money is not so much for home builders, though there is some for that. It's mostly for taking federal buildings and winterizing those, making those more energy efficient, and the states also have some funds to direct towards that. And this is something that this is the cheapest energy is the energy that you don't consume. And so that's why it's a very good way to spend our energy dollars, and it helps the economy in a lot of ways. We're not sending all that money overseas.
But though I do think that people are less focused on energy as the oil prices have come down.
Yes, they are, and it's kind of regrettable that that's the case.
We had kind of a good we were kind of good on the roll with cutting back.
And there's something to be said for keeping it artificially high at a constant rate with taxation. Though that's not popular in some quarters.
So we have green jobs. Mm-hmm. Well, what skills do you have to have? Don't you have to have certain skills to get green jobs?
So in some cases you do, but there are already people who work in insulation, who work in that field, right. And it takes if people who are.
And I bet it's a segue. If you've done something in construction, you could probably segue over.
Exactly.
Right.
If you're good working with your hands, you can probably learn these skills.
So we have that.
Mm-hmm. There are other green energy jobs that have to do with, for example, putting up wind turbines and putting up solar panels.
Right.
And there you'll find fewer workers who are currently equipped to do that.
And that requires a different skill set.
To some extent it does.
More sophisticated skill set.
I would think so, yes.
Right. Okay.
But roofers can learn to put up those solar panels, for example, with some electricity.
Tell me something. We have a lot of unemployed financial counselors and financial advisors and bond salesmen and other names that people call these folks that we won't use on public TV. What are we going to do for those folks?
I'm not really sure.
Mayor Bloomberg wants to start a $42 million training program.
Yeah, I think that's going to be important for the economy of New York. For the economy of the whole country, well, there are financial centers all over the country, of course, but the stimulus plan is not particularly directed at that industry segment.
So that's going to be a different kind of...
That's going to be harder for...
What about auto workers? What are we going to do with all those auto workers?
There is money that's related to research that can be used for the... what do you call them? Hybrids, right. the plug-in hybrids, and for the automobile of the future. Now, whether that's going to come in time to save General Motors is an open question.
I don't know. I don't understand. We don't want to get into it. I don't understand much about these hybrids anyway. I don't know what people in New York City are going to do. Park their car on the street and look for a place to plug it in?
People in New York don't have cars.
right. So is this book a how to find them? I mean, what do you do if you're unemployed and you want to get in on the stimulus plan? You don't call up the White House and say, I'm available, and send them a resume. What do you do?
Actually, there is a chapter at the back there about job hunting, in which I talk about the importance, and this is not a brand new concept of networking. So
what do people do?
You want to network a lot. You don't want to rely on...
So I'm unemployed and I have a resume. What do I do with it?
You don't put it exclusively on Monster.com or one of those sites.
Or LinkedIn or one of those other things.
I mean, they're good. LinkedIn is actually one of the advantages of that one is that it's networking. It's about networking. And so there's sites like that, and even things like Facebook in some ways can be used to network with people. The most jobs that open and close are never advertised, or not put on these job boards, and so people find out about them because they know somebody who knows somebody.
That's still the best way to find a job.
It still is, more so now than ever.
Yeah.
And as jobs get harder to find, it's more important to use those
And I think
techniques.
as more people are unemployed, I mean, for a period of time in my career, I worked with a gentleman. I wasn't in human resources, but I worked in that area in retailing. And I remember the days you could have a stack of resumes, I mean, even in good times, pretty high. But if somebody called you up and said, I'm sending a friend of mine over, I'm sending someone over who worked for me, that person went right to the top of the pile for an interview as opposed to all these resumes.
Because that person is more of a known quantity.
Yeah.
Than resume, there's a lot you can hide in a resume. You can't tell. Whereas if it's someone who knows somebody, then that opens up a door.
Are jobs being created as a result of a stimulus plan that we haven't had before?
No, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say these are new jobs. A lot of the times, though, there are jobs. Well, I mentioned the ones in construction, for example.
Okay. And let's talk about
for example, they're not all at the bottom end of the employment scale, of the wage scale, and the skill scale.
Health services?
That's one. Now, that's probably going to help in a couple of ways. At the top, it's going to help because there's money that's going to go for medical research. Okay. And that the National Institutes of Health have lots of projects which they approve of and yet can't fund. But there's funding money under this.
And that's for people perhaps that are scientists.
Medical scientists,
people who have invested in their education and kind of waiting to get a little bit of a payback on that.
Yes, and it's going to result probably in breakthroughs in healthcare.
Yeah, will that take young graduates or young people that are graduating and can't find jobs?
Those will be some of the people who will benefit from that. Also, people who are currently out there. And just as in the construction projects, they want ones that are shovel ready. In this case, they want ones that you might say are test tube ready.
Are there enough of those?
And as I say, National Institute of Health, they've approved projects galore that they can fund right away, that they're ready to roll.
And then let's talk about another industry that badly needs it.
But just about a little bit more about health.
Okay.
Healthcare, another way in which it will benefit is in the extension of some benefits, some health benefits. COBRA benefits can be extended longer and for less money than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I think, what is it? The government's going to pick up 65% of the COBRA payment.
I think that's right.
COBRA is the hangover if you've been let go, you've been terminated, or you're
so you can continue under your employer's health plan.
But it's very pricey
because you generally have to pay it all out of your pocket. But this will pick up part of the cost. So that will cause healthcare jobs because people sometimes refrain from getting medical help because they can't afford it.
Right. Okay, so the demand gets pent up a little bit and they are anteed up. Education.
Education will be helped largely because there's money that goes to states to help them fund some of their budget gaps, and using this for education. This is something that a lot of states are hurting with right now. They can't afford to pay for the education that goes on there, and there's money to help with that.
Would you say that most of the jobs that are being created under the president's stimulus plan are middle class kind of work? Are they Are they white-collar jobs? Are they?
It's the full range. But I'd say most of them are lower, even lower middle class.
So high school education would be sufficient?
But you have to realize that that a lot of these construction jobs, for example, you may think of that as being high school education, but a lot of them people need an apprenticeship to go into or extensive on-the-job training to do.
I'm just trying to figure out, we have an unemployment rate and growing.
Yes.
10%, unfortunately. I'm trying to figure out how much of that will realistically come down as a result of this $1 trillion stimulus plan.
It's hard to say. This may not be enough to dig us out of the hole that we're in, but it may make it a more shallow hole than it would have been otherwise.
Right. Because, the truth of the matter is, most economists think that the only way we can really turn our economy around is through jobs.
Yes, and this is what this is
aimed
at.
You know something? A lot of folks are getting laid off, not because their own companies are in so much trouble, but their companies are afraid they're going to be in trouble. Yeah,
there's a certain amount of this that happens, that people react ahead of time because of anxiety. People cut back their purchasing. And people, actually, in some ways, it actually creates a stimulus in some very minor ways. For example, a lot of people have been getting knee replacement surgery because they don't know if next month they're going to not be covered by their employer anymore.
Right. So they run to get all these.
Some of these things, yeah. But for the most part, it is a lessening of demand in most parts, in all these different businesses.
So when you gather this information, as you do that for a living, who do you give it to? Who is your client base?
Career decision makers, and those tend to be people going into college, people in high school, but to some extent people who are out in the workforce for a while and have to make a career decision. And now there are more and more of those people.
How do they access this information?
Well, they can buy it at the bookstores, they can buy it on the web, or they can take it out of the library. Yeah. Now, there is Department of Labor information that's on the web, and it's one of the really great things about our Department of Labor is that so much information is out there for people to get a hold of. It's wonderful.
So it's easy to access information.
Yes.
But I'm told it's very hard to find a job.
Yes, it is. In these times, it is.
Is this going to make it easier, the stimulus plan?
I hope it will. You mean this book, or will the stimulus plan make it easier?
It would be both. The stimulus plan. Whether if the book makes it easier to find a job with a stimulus plan, all to the good.
Yes, I think the stimulus plan will help make it easier to find jobs.
I just want to bring that also because it's a very good title for now. You also have another book, 150 Best Recession-Proof Books.
Jobs.
Oh, recession-proof books, jobs, right. I'm tongue-tied today. I think this is a good. I just glanced through it, but I think this must be a good brand for you.
Yes, it is. But it's just an unfortunate irony of what I do that when times turn bad, it sells books better than it would even in good times because people are wondering what to do next and they're looking for resources that will help them make decisions. Now, the jobs that are in that book, when they say they're the best.
What are some of the best recession-proof jobs?
Registered nurse.
Registered nurse?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
really?
I'll put that way up at the top there.
Really?
Because, yes.
Is that now open to men as well as women?
Absolutely. More and more men are going into that, and it's got terrific opportunities. You can work just about anywhere in the country.
And student loans to go to school are breaking up. They're easier?
Yes. And there's a need for them not only working on the floors in the hospitals, but they also have other work. For example, sometimes they're used to make decisions about who gets health insurance or not.
There's a piece of the population that worries me, Laurence, and that's young kids graduating from college. They kind of always graduate anyway into another level. And before we close, what's one good piece of advice for those kids?
Good piece of advice for those kids. Don't take something just because it's the only job that's available.
Network and
try to find something that asserts more what you are and what your potential is in the long run.
Some folks say, as a closing comment, that these are the kind of times when you might think about doing something you really want to do instead of just doing something for money.
That's another thing to think about. And there are other things you can do, such as, for example, going to Peace Corps or the military.
Teach for America.
Yes, those are fine ways to
and by default get an MAA.
That's the other thing, is wait out the recession in grad school.
Right. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on. I think that I looked through this also, and I think for anyone looking, it's a very good primer. Laurence Shatkin. You're watching Judith West on Getting Your Money's Worth. Thank you for watching.